Before we begin, settle into a comfortable place, let the worries of the day drift a little farther away, and allow your imagination to travel back through thousands of years. Tonight, our journey leads us to the sunlit shores of ancient Greece, where blue seas met rugged mountains, where olive trees covered gentle hillsides, and where stories were considered every bit as important as history itself. Long before great marble temples crowned the hills of Athens, before philosophers debated beneath shaded colonnades, and before historians carefully recorded the triumphs and failures of kings, there lived a generation the Greeks remembered as the Age of Heroes. It was an age that existed somewhere between memory and myth, where the gods were believed to walk among mortals, where rivers carried divine spirits, and where every mountain peak seemed to hide an ancient secret. Whether these tales describe real people whose lives slowly transformed into legend, or heroes born entirely from imagination, they have endured for nearly 3,000 years. Around countless hearth fires, aboard merchant ships crossing the Aegean Sea, and later within grand amphitheaters, listeners gathered to hear the names of mighty warriors, clever kings, and wandering adventurers. Among all of those legendary figures, one name echoed louder than almost any other: Achilles. His name has become so familiar that even today, people who have never opened an ancient Greek poem recognize it. We speak casually of an Achilles heel whenever someone has a hidden weakness. Artists have painted him. Writers have reimagined him. Historians have searched for the truth behind him. Yet the man himself remains wrapped in the soft haze of legend, where certainty fades and imagination quietly fills the empty spaces. This evening, rather than racing from one famous battle to another, we will wander slowly through his remarkable life. We will pause beside quiet rivers, walk through peaceful forests, sail across calm seas, and visit magnificent cities whose stone foundations now rest beneath layers of earth. Along the way, we will meet kings and queens, humble shepherds, gifted craftsmen, and even the immortal gods who were said to shape the fortunes of men. The world Achilles inherited was very different from our own. The lands surrounding the Aegean Sea were divided among many small kingdoms, each ruled by its own royal family. Their palaces overlooked fertile valleys where farmers cultivated wheat and barley. Fishermen launched narrow wooden boats before sunrise, hoping for calm waters and full nets. Shepherds guided their flocks across rocky hillsides while artisans hammered bronze into tools, armor, and elegant jewelry that caught the Mediterranean sunlight. Travel was slow, news spread by word of mouth, and every distant horizon promised mystery. Dense forests covered mountain slopes where wolves and bears still wandered freely. Merchant ships carried fragrant oils, wine, finely woven cloth, and precious metals between islands separated by glittering stretches of sea. Above everything rose the snow-capped peaks where many Greeks believed the Olympian gods watched the world below. To those ancient people, the gods were not distant creators who rarely intervened. They were active participants in everyday life. A favorable wind might be a gift from a deity. An unexpected storm could be a warning. A fortunate harvest reflected divine blessing, while misfortune often carried a lesson hidden beneath its sorrow. Every sacrifice, every prayer, and every festival sought to maintain a fragile harmony between the mortal and the divine. In such a world, destiny was never entirely one's own. The Greeks believed that every person, from the poorest farmer to the mightiest king, walked a path woven long before birth. The three mysterious fates measured each human life like a carefully spun thread. One determined its beginning, another measured its length, and the last would eventually cut it. Even Zeus himself, ruler of Olympus, was sometimes portrayed as respecting the power of fate. No story explores that idea more deeply than the life of Achilles. His tale is not simply about strength, courage, or victory. It is about choices made when every path carries a cost. It is about friendship that outshines glory, love that survives loss, and the quiet realization that even the greatest heroes cannot escape time forever. Beneath the shining armor and legendary reputation was a young man asked to bear a burden few could imagine. As we move gently through this ancient story, you may notice familiar names appearing from time to time: Odysseus, Helen, Agamemnon, Hector, and others whose lives became woven together during the long years of the Trojan War. Each has their own story, yet tonight they appear only as companions along Achilles' journey. Our attention remains with the young prince whose life would forever shape Greek mythology. So, let the modern world fade gently into the distance. Imagine the sound of gentle waves washing against a quiet shore. Picture bronze helmets catching the morning light, seabirds circling above white cliffs, and warm breezes carrying the scent of salt, pine, and wild thyme across the hills of Greece. Our story begins not on a battlefield, but with a wedding unlike any other, a celebration attended by gods and mortals alike, where joy filled the air, music echoed across the mountains, and no one yet realized that a single forgotten guest would unknowingly set into motion the destiny of Achilles and the greatest legend of the ancient world. Long before Achilles drew his first breath, before his name became known across the Greek world, the threads of his destiny had already begun to take shape. Our story now leaves the quiet shores of imagination and arrives in the kingdom of Phthia, a peaceful land in northern Greece. Unlike the bustling cities that would one day dominate Greek history, Phthia was a place of broad valleys, wooded hills, and winding rivers that emptied into the sparkling Aegean Sea. Shepherds guided flocks across grassy meadows, farmers tended orchards of figs and olives, and fishermen welcomed the dawn from simple wooden boats rocking gently against the shoreline. Here ruled King Peleus. Though remembered as a noble king, Peleus had not lived an easy life. Like many heroes of Greek myth, his younger years were filled with exile, difficult choices, and long journeys before he finally found peace in Phthia. By the time our tale begins, he had become known as a wise and respected ruler, brave enough to defend his people, yet gentle enough to earn their loyalty. Far beyond the world of mortals lived another figure whose life would soon become intertwined with his own. Her name was Thetis. Unlike Peleus, Thetis belonged to the sea. She was one of the Nereids, graceful sea nymphs said to dwell beneath the shimmering waves. Ancient poets imagined them dancing among coral gardens, riding dolphins through clear blue water, and tending the hidden wonders of the deep. Wherever Thetis traveled, the sea itself seemed calmer, its waves reflecting the changing light like polished silver. Her beauty was admired not only by mortals but by the gods themselves. Both Zeus, king of Olympus, and Poseidon, ruler of the seas, were said to have admired Thetis. Yet neither sought to marry her, for an ancient prophecy reached the halls of the gods. It foretold that Thetis would bear a son greater than his father. For most families, such words might have sounded like a blessing. But among immortal rulers, they carried a different meaning. Zeus himself had overthrown his own father, Cronus, who in turn had overthrown Uranus before him. The gods knew well that power often passed through conflict, and no king of Olympus wished to raise a son destined to surpass him. Rather than risk the prophecy, the gods chose another path. Thetis would marry a mortal, and so the immortal sea nymph was promised to King Peleus of Phthia. Though the match may seem unusual, ancient storytellers describe their wedding as one of the grandest celebrations ever held. High upon Mount Pelion, where forests stretched toward the clouds, gods and goddesses gathered beside mortal kings. The muses filled the air with music so beautiful that even the birds fell silent to listen. Apollo played his golden lyre, while gentle breezes carried the fragrance of pine and wildflowers through the mountain slopes. The centaur Chiron, wisest of his kind, welcomed honored guests. River gods, woodland spirits, and sea nymphs all arrived bearing gifts. Some brought finely crafted armor, others magnificent horses, and still others treasures fashioned by divine hands. For a brief moment, it seemed that heaven and earth existed together in perfect harmony. Yet one invitation had been forgotten, or perhaps deliberately withheld. Eris, the goddess of discord, had not been welcomed to the feast. Whether the hosts feared her disruptive nature or simply overlooked her, the slight was enough to stir resentment. Rather than storm into the celebration in anger, Eris chose a quieter act, one whose consequences would echo across generations. She appeared at the gathering carrying a single golden apple. Upon its shining surface were written simple words, "For the fairest." With that, she tossed the apple among the assembled goddesses before disappearing once again. Almost immediately, the celebration changed. Hera claimed the apple belonged to her as Queen of the Gods. Athena believed wisdom deserved the prize. Aphrodite insisted that beauty itself could belong to no other. Their disagreement could not easily be settled. In time, that single golden apple would lead to the judgment of Paris, the abduction of Helen, and ultimately the Trojan War itself. Remarkably, all of those legendary events began here, at the wedding of Peleus and Thetis. Neither bride nor groom could have imagined what had been set into motion. For now, life returned peacefully to Phthia. The wedding guests departed, the mountain paths grew quiet once more, and the seasons passed in gentle rhythm. Spring covered the hillsides with wildflowers. Summer warmed the vineyards. Autumn filled storehouses with grain, while winter cloaked the distant peaks in snow. Then, in time, a son was born. The child was named Achilles. To those who celebrated his arrival, he was simply the young prince of Phthia, heir to a respected kingdom. Servants smiled at the infant sleeping peacefully in his cradle. His father looked upon him with quiet pride, while Thetis, though filled with love, carried a sorrow she spoke of to few. She knew the prophecy surrounding her son had not truly ended. It had only begun. Somewhere beyond the peaceful walls of Phthia, destiny was already waiting with remarkable patience. Before Achilles could walk, before he would learn the songs of poets or the lessons of kings, the choices that would shape his life were already drawing closer, carried as steadily as the tides that forever rose and fell along the shores where his extraordinary story had begun. As Achilles grew from a quiet infant into a curious child, the people of Phthia saw only a prince beginning to explore the world around him. He chased butterflies through flowering meadows, watched fishermen mend their nets along the shore, and listened with wide-eyed fascination as traveling storytellers recounted tales of distant kingdoms. Yet within the walls of the royal household, his mother remained uneasy. Thetis had never forgotten the prophecy that surrounded her son. While others celebrated his strength and bright spirit, she saw the shadow that lingered just beyond his future. Like every parent, she wished to protect her child. But unlike most parents, she believed she was struggling not against ordinary dangers, but against fate itself. The most famous tale tells of a moonlit journey to the river Styx, the mysterious water said to separate the world of the living from the realm of the dead. Holding the infant Achilles tightly, Thetis lowered him into the dark, enchanted river, hoping its sacred waters would make him invulnerable to harm. She grasped him by one small heel. According to this tradition, every part of his body touched by the sticks became impossible to wound. Only the heel where his mother held him remained untouched, leaving one tiny place where fate could still reach him. Another, older tradition describes Thetis attempting to burn away her son's mortal nature. Night after night, while Peleus slept, she is said to have placed the child within a sacred fire before soothing him with divine nectar. The flames were not meant to harm him, but to remove the fragile human part of his being and leave only immortality behind. One evening, Peleus awoke and witnessed the strange ritual. Believing his beloved son was in terrible danger, he rushed forward and snatched Achilles from the fire. His interruption broke the enchantment. Thetis, heartbroken and angered that her efforts had failed, returned to the sea, leaving Peleus to raise their son. Different storytellers favored different versions of these events. Some combined them, while others rejected them entirely. Yet all agreed on one point. Thetis loved her son deeply. With Thetis now spending much of her time beneath the sea, Peleus sought the finest teacher in all of Greece. There was only one choice. High upon the forested slopes of Mount Pelion lived Chiron, the wisest of the centaurs. Unlike the wild and unruly centaurs often described in Greek mythology, Chiron was known for his patience, kindness, and extraordinary knowledge. His cave had become a place where young heroes came to learn not only the arts of war, but also wisdom, healing, music, and self-control. The journey to Pelion carried Achilles through thick pine forests where sunlight filtered softly through the branches. Cool streams crossed the mountain paths, and birdsong echoed across quiet valleys. It was a peaceful place, far removed from royal courts and distant prophecies. Here, surrounded by nature, Achilles began his true education. Chiron believed that even princes should understand humility before they sought greatness. As the years passed, Achilles learned to track deer across damp earth by studying faint hoofprints. He practiced drawing a bow until every arrow flew true. Spears became extensions of his own hands, and running mountain trails strengthened both his body and his endurance. But Chiron taught far more than combat. He introduced Achilles to the healing properties of herbs that grew among the rocky hillsides. Wild yarrow could help stop bleeding. Willow bark eased pain. Fragrant thyme and rosemary found uses both in cooking and medicine. A warrior, Chiron believed, should know how to save life as well as defend it. Music filled many evenings. The gentle notes of the lyre drifted from the cave as teacher and student watched the fading sunlight paint the distant sea in shades of gold and violet. Ancient Greeks considered music essential to a balanced life, capable of calming strong emotions and bringing harmony to the soul. Stories were equally important. By the warmth of the fire, Chiron recounted the deeds of earlier heroes, not to encourage pride, but to reveal the consequences of arrogance, anger, generosity, and courage. Every legend carried a lesson hidden beneath its adventure. Achilles listened carefully. Though gifted with remarkable speed and strength, he was still simply a growing boy. He laughed with the other students who trained on the mountain. He marveled at soaring eagles riding the warm afternoon winds. He wandered quiet woodland paths where wildflowers bloomed between ancient stones, unaware that these peaceful years would become some of the happiest of his life. Sometimes, Thetis rose from the sea to visit her son. Ancient poets imagined her appearing at lonely beaches where gentle waves lapped against smooth pebbles. She would embrace Achilles, offer quiet words of encouragement, and then disappear beneath the water once more before the tide returned. Perhaps she saw how quickly he was growing. Perhaps she wondered how many such visits remained before destiny called him elsewhere. For now, however, the future could wait. Nestled among the forests of Mount Pelion, beneath towering pines and clear mountain skies, Achilles continued learning the skills that would one day make him legendary. But his greatest lesson had not yet arrived, for soon he would discover that no amount of strength or wisdom could shield a person from the difficult choices that fate sometimes asks them to make. The years passed as gently as the changing seasons upon Mount Pelion. The boy who had once wandered the forest collecting smooth stones and listening to birdsong had grown into a remarkable young man. Those who trained beside him admired his talent, though Chiron quietly reminded them that true greatness was measured not only by strength, but by character. Still, there were moments when the wise centaur would study his most gifted pupil with thoughtful eyes, as though he sensed that these peaceful lessons would not last forever. In ancient Greece, few people believed life unfolded by chance alone. The Greeks imagined that every person traveled a road laid out long before birth, one whose twists and turns could sometimes be glimpsed through prophecy. Such visions were never entirely clear. They arrived like reflections upon moving water, beautiful, mysterious, and often understood only after events had already come to pass. For Achilles, one prophecy stood above all others. Its exact wording differs among the ancient authors, yet its meaning remained remarkably consistent. The young prince would one day stand before two very different futures. If he chose to remain in his homeland, he would enjoy a long and peaceful life. He would inherit his father's kingdom, rule wisely, watch children and grandchildren grow, and eventually fade into old age surrounded by those he loved. His name, however, would slowly disappear with time, remembered only by his descendants. The second path offered the opposite. If Achilles sailed to the distant city of Troy, he would win glory unlike any warrior before him. Songs would celebrate his courage for countless generations. His name would outlive kingdoms and empires, but he would never return home. To modern ears, such a choice may seem impossible. Why would anyone knowingly exchange a full lifetime for fame? To understand Achilles, we must first understand the values of the world in which he lived. The ancient Greeks believed deeply in kleos, a word often translated as glory, but carrying a richer meaning. Kleos was the honor earned through remarkable deeds and preserved forever through poetry and memory. Since few believed ordinary mortals could escape death, many hoped they might instead achieve a different kind of immortality. Not an endless life, an unforgettable one. A hero whose name was still spoken centuries later had, in a sense, conquered time itself. Yet another Greek idea stood beside kleos. This was nostos, the joyful return home after long journeys. To sit beside one's own hearth, walk familiar fields, and grow old among family carried its own quiet honor. Many heroes sought both glory and homecoming, though mythology often forced them to choose between the two. Achilles, according to prophecy, would not be granted both. As he matured, whispers of this prediction gradually reached his ears. Perhaps Chiron introduced the subject with gentle care. Perhaps Peleus finally judged his son old enough to know the truth. However the conversation unfolded, Achilles eventually learned that the future waiting beyond Mount Pelion offered no perfect ending. No ancient poet tells us exactly how he reacted. We are left to imagine a thoughtful young man standing beneath towering pines as evening settled across the mountains. Perhaps he looked toward the distant sea, wondering what lay beyond the horizon. Perhaps he questioned whether destiny truly ruled every life, or whether even prophecy could be changed. Such questions have echoed across human history. Can a person escape fate by avoiding it? Or do attempts to flee destiny simply guide us toward it? The Greeks themselves offered different answers. Some stories suggested that fate could never be altered. Others hinted that choices still mattered, even if the final destination remained unchanged. Thetis, however, refused to surrender hope. Whenever she visited her son from the sea, she encouraged the quieter path. She imagined Achilles growing into a wise king, ruling the fertile valleys of Phthia with kindness and fairness. She pictured grandchildren playing in the palace courtyards, festivals celebrating peaceful harvests, and long evenings spent watching the sun disappear beneath calm waters. It was the future every mother longs to see. Peleus, too, surely desired his son's happiness, though he understood the powerful pull of honor within Greek society. He had been a hero himself and knew that young warriors often dreamed of accomplishing deeds worthy of song. Between his parents stood Achilles, not yet a famous warrior, not yet the hero of Troy. Simply a young man beginning to understand that adulthood sometimes arrives not with celebration, but with difficult choices. Despite the weight of prophecy, life on Mount Pelion continued much as before. Morning mist still drifted through the forests. Deer grazed in quiet clearings. Chiron continued his lessons, reminding his students that wisdom was found not only in preparing for tomorrow, but in appreciating the peace of today. For a little while longer, Achilles was able to do just that. He climbed familiar mountain paths, practiced with spear and lyre alike, and found comfort in the steady rhythm of ordinary days. Yet beyond the tranquil forests, events were unfolding that would soon make his decision unavoidable. Across the Aegean Sea, in a city protected by mighty walls, a Trojan prince named Paris was about to make a choice of his own, one that would send ripples across kingdoms and draw Achilles ever closer to the destiny he had spent his youth trying not to imagine. The prophecy surrounding Achilles followed him like a distant shadow. As the young hero grew older, the world beyond Phthia became increasingly aware of his talents. Stories traveled from kingdom to kingdom of the remarkable son of Peleus and Thetis, the young warrior who moved with incredible speed, whose skill with weapons seemed almost impossible for a mortal, and whose future appeared destined for greatness. But to his mother, greatness came with a terrible price. Thetis knew that the path of glory led toward Troy, and she knew that Troy meant war. She had heard the whispers of fate and understood that the very qualities that made her son extraordinary would eventually draw him toward danger. She searched for a way to hide Achilles from the world. The solution came through an island kingdom in the Aegean Sea known as Skyros. Ruled by King Lycomedes, Skyros was a peaceful place of rocky shores, quiet villages, and sheltered valleys. It was far from the growing tensions among the Greek kingdoms and far from the armies that would soon gather for war. There, Thetis believed her son might disappear. The ancient stories tell us that Achilles was disguised as a young woman and brought into the palace among the daughters of King Lycomedes. Dressed in unfamiliar clothing and living a life far removed from the training fields of Mount Pelion, he was asked to set aside the identity that had defined his childhood. For a time, it seemed possible. The young prince who had trained with warriors and studied beneath Chiron now lived among music, weaving, and palace routines. Some ancient storytellers imagined Achilles accepting this unusual life peacefully. Others suggested that beneath the disguise, the warrior within him remained impossible to conceal. Among the daughters of Lycomedes was a young woman named Deidamia. Ancient traditions differ in their accounts of their relationship, but many describe a bond forming between the two during his time on Skyros. From this union came a son, Neoptolemus, who would later become an important figure in the final stages of the Trojan War. Yet even as Achilles experienced a brief moment of ordinary life, the world around him continued moving toward conflict. The Trojan War was approaching. The story of how that war began had been unfolding for years. The golden apple thrown by Ares had led to the judgment of Paris, a Trojan prince who was asked to decide which goddess was the fairest. In exchange for choosing Aphrodite, Paris was promised the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. When Paris later took Helen to Troy, the Greek kingdoms united under one purpose: to bring her back. Kings who had once competed against one another now prepared to sail together. Great warriors gathered their weapons. Ships were built along the shores. The call for heroes spread throughout Greece. And among those heroes, one name was missing: Achilles. The Greeks believed they needed him. Without him, they feared the expedition would fail. Among those searching for him was Odysseus, the clever king of Ithaca. Unlike Achilles, Odysseus was not known primarily for physical strength. His greatest weapon was his mind. He was patient, observant, and skilled at seeing what others overlooked. When Odysseus learned that Achilles had been hidden on Skyros, he devised a plan. According to one famous version of the story, Odysseus arrived at the palace disguised as a merchant bringing gifts. Among the items he carried were beautiful fabrics, jewelry, and other treasures suitable for the daughters of a king. But hidden among those gifts was something unexpected: a collection of weapons. As the young women examined the treasures, they naturally admired the elegant objects before them. But when a sudden sound of alarm rang out, perhaps a trumpet announcing danger or a false attack arranged by Odysseus, the palace reacted quickly. The daughters of Lycomedes reached for the jewelry and clothing. Achilles reached for the weapons. In that single moment, the disguise fell away. The warrior revealed himself. Even after years spent attempting to escape his destiny, his instincts remained unchanged. When faced with the possibility of danger, he did not reach for comfort or decoration. He reached for a sword. Thetis' attempt to protect her son had succeeded only temporarily. She had hidden him from the world, but she could not hide him from who he was. Achilles now faced the same choice that prophecy had placed before him years earlier. A quiet life remained possible. He could stay on Skyros. He could return to Phthia. He could grow old as a respected king, surrounded by family and peace. Or he could sail toward Troy, toward battle, toward glory, toward the fate that awaited him. For Achilles, the choice was not simple. He was not a man who desired death, nor was he unaware of what war would cost. He understood that every victory would bring suffering, and every song sung in his honor would come with memories of those who never returned home. Yet something within him answered the call. The same spirit that had driven him across Mount Pelion, the same determination that had pushed him to master every lesson Chiron offered, now guided him toward the unknown horizon. Achilles chose Troy. Soon, the ships of Greece would gather upon the coastline. Kings would raise their banners, warriors would sharpen their weapons, and the greatest conflict of the heroic age would begin. And among them all would stand Achilles, the young man who had once tried to escape his destiny, only to discover that destiny had been waiting patiently all along. The decision had been made. Achilles would not remain hidden among the quiet halls of Skyros. He would not spend his life protected from danger, watching the years pass peacefully within the safety of his homeland. Instead, he would step forward into the uncertain path that awaited him. The call of Troy had reached him, and he answered. Across the lands of Greece, preparations for war had already begun. The disappearance of Helen of Sparta had united kingdoms that were often divided by rivalry and pride. At the center of this great gathering stood Agamemnon, king of Mycenae. Powerful, wealthy, and commanding the largest army among the Greek kingdoms, Agamemnon was chosen as the leader of the expedition. His authority did not come from kindness or humility, but from influence and strength. He was the brother of Menelaus, husband of Helen, and the man determined to restore the honor of his family. Yet even among the Greeks, Agamemnon's leadership would not always be easy. The heroes sailing with him were not ordinary soldiers. They were kings, princes, and warriors whose own names carried weight. Each brought their own pride, their own ambitions, and their own understanding of honor. Among those answering the call were some of the greatest figures of the heroic age. Odysseus of Ithaca brought his famous intelligence and ability to navigate difficult situations. Ajax of Salamis was known for his enormous strength and courage. Diomedes of Argos carried a reputation for fearless combat. Nestor of Pylos, the oldest among the great warriors, offered wisdom gained through many years of experience. And from Phthia came Achilles. He did not arrive alone. With him traveled the Myrmidons, the fierce warriors who followed him with complete loyalty. They came from the lands surrounding Phthia, trained under the command of their young leader, and prepared to follow him wherever the journey led. They were disciplined, skilled, and devoted to the warrior they believed would bring them honor. Their connection was not simply that of a king and his soldiers. It was built upon trust earned through years of shared hardship and training. Before the great fleet could depart, the Greek armies gathered at Aulis, a coastal region where hundreds of ships waited along the shore. Imagine the scene. The coastline stretched beneath the warm Mediterranean sun. Wooden ships rested upon the sand, their curved hulls prepared for the open sea. Sailors carried supplies aboard, jars of olive oil, dried grain, weapons, armor, and tools needed for the long journey ahead. Horses moved restlessly beside the camps while craftsmen repaired shields and sharpened bronze blades. The beach became a temporary city. Fires burned through the evening hours. Beneath the excitement of adventure was an undeniable truth. Many of these men would never return. The Greeks understood that journeys across the sea required the favor of the gods. Before departing, they performed sacred rituals and offered sacrifices, hoping for calm winds and protection. The boundary between the human world and the divine was always present in ancient Greek thought, and no important journey began without seeking approval from the powers believed to guide nature itself. For Achilles, this departure carried a different weight. He knew he was leaving behind more than a homeland. He was leaving behind the possibility of an ordinary life. Somewhere in Phthia, his father Peleus remained behind, an aging king watching his son sail toward a future filled with uncertainty. Thetis, his immortal mother, understood perhaps better than anyone what this journey meant. She knew the songs that would one day celebrate Achilles would also carry the sadness of what he would lose. A mother's heart could not easily accept such a fate. Yet even Thetis could not stop the tide of events. The fleet was ready. One by one, the ships entered the water. Oars moved through the waves in steady rhythm, carrying warriors away from familiar shores and toward lands they had never seen. The coastline of Greece slowly disappeared behind them, replaced by endless blue water stretching beneath the open sky. For many aboard those ships, Troy represented a distant enemy. For Achilles, it represented something more complicated. It was the place where his name would become immortal, and perhaps the place where he would lose everything. The journey across the Aegean was long. Ancient sailors relied on knowledge of the stars, changing winds, and familiar landmarks along the coast. They traveled carefully, stopping at islands and harbors when necessary, gathering supplies and waiting for favorable conditions. During these quiet moments at sea, Achilles was still young. He was not yet the warrior whose anger would shake the Greek army, nor the legendary figure whose name would echo through centuries. He was a son traveling away from home, a leader carrying the hopes of his people, a hero walking willingly toward the destiny he had once tried to escape. As the Greek ships finally approached the distant shores of Asia Minor, the great city of Troy waited beyond the horizon. Its walls had stood for generations, protecting its people and guarding its treasures. The Greeks had come believing they would win quickly. They did not yet know that Troy would not fall in a season. They did not know the war would stretch across 10 long years. And they did not know that among all the warriors gathered on those shores, one man would become both the greatest champion of the Greeks and one of the most tragic figures ever remembered. The Greek fleet had finally crossed the Aegean Sea. After leaving the familiar shores of their homeland, the warriors of Greece entered a world of unfamiliar coastlines, distant islands, and uncertain waters. Their destination was Troy, but the journey there would not be as simple as many had imagined. The heroes who sailed beneath the Greek banners expected a swift campaign. They believed the strength of their armies, combined with the courage of their greatest warriors, would bring a quick victory. But the gods, the winds, and the twists of fate had other plans. The journey toward Troy became a wandering path filled with delays, misunderstandings, and unexpected challenges. Before the famous battles outside the walls of Troy, Achilles and the Greek armies would experience adventures that tested their patience and revealed the unpredictable nature of the heroic age. One of the earliest encounters occurred in the land of Mysia. According to later traditions, the Greek fleet mistakenly arrived there while searching for Troy. Believing they had reached their enemy's territory, the warriors began an attack. The mistake soon became clear, but not before a fierce battle took place between the Greeks and the local king, Telephus. Telephus was not an ordinary ruler. He was the son of Heracles, the legendary hero whose strength and adventures had already become famous throughout Greece. Like many figures in Greek mythology, Telephus carried both royal blood and heroic ancestry. During the fighting, Achilles encountered him. The details of their meeting vary depending on the ancient source, but many stories agree that Achilles wounded Telephus with his spear. The injury was strange and troubling. Despite attempts to heal it, the wound refused to close. Days passed, then weeks, and Telephus continued suffering. Eventually, a prophecy revealed that only the person who caused the wound could heal it: Achilles. This created a strange and unexpected situation. The same weapon that had brought pain would also bring healing. In some versions of the story, the Greeks scraped pieces of rust from Achilles' spear and placed them upon the wound, allowing Telephus to recover. After these events, the Greek fleet continued its journey. Yet the challenges did not end there. The armies eventually gathered at Aulis once again, but the winds refused to carry their ships forward. The great fleet remained trapped, waiting for favorable conditions that never seemed to arrive. The soldiers grew restless. Days turned into weeks. The ships sat motionless along the shore while warriors who had prepared themselves for battle found themselves surrounded by waiting instead. The priests and seers searched for answers. Eventually, the prophet Calchas delivered a troubling message. According to the prophecy, the goddess Artemis had been offended, and the winds would not return until she was satisfied. The story of what followed is one of the most debated and tragic episodes in Greek mythology, the sacrifice of Iphigenia, daughter of Agamemnon. Different ancient writers tell different versions. Some describe her death as a terrible sacrifice demanded by the gods. Others tell of Artemis saving her at the final moment and carrying her away to serve as a priestess. The uncertainty reflects the complexity of Greek storytelling, where myths often change depending on the poet and the audience. Regardless of the version, the event marked an important moment. The journey to Troy was no longer simply an adventure. It carried consequences. The choices made before the war had already begun to create suffering. Eventually, the winds returned. The sails rose. The ships moved forward once again. As the Greek fleet traveled across the sea, Achilles sailed among thousands of warriors who looked to him with admiration. He was still young, but his reputation had already grown. The stories of his skill, speed, and courage traveled ahead of him like a wave reaching the shore before the tide arrived. Yet Achilles was not the only person whose name would become legendary. Across the sea, inside the powerful walls of Troy, another group of heroes prepared for the coming conflict. There was Hector, eldest son of King Priam and the greatest defender of Troy. Unlike Achilles, who sought glory through personal excellence, Hector represented duty, family, and responsibility. He fought not because he desired fame, but because his city and loved ones depended upon him. There was Paris, whose decision had helped ignite the conflict. There was King Priam, an aging ruler who would soon face unimaginable sorrow. And there was Helen, whose beauty had become the symbol around which kingdoms had gathered. The Greeks were sailing toward more than a city. They were sailing toward a story that would outlive every person involved. At last, after long preparation and difficult travels, the Greek ships approached the shores of the Troad. The land of Troy appeared before them, its plains stretching beneath the shadow of Mount Ida. Beyond the coastline stood the city they had crossed the sea to reach. The war was about to begin. For Achilles, the peaceful lessons of Mount Pelion and the quiet years before destiny called were now behind him. The world he entered would be filled with bronze armor, roaring battle cries, and choices that would define his name forever. But before the first great clash between Greeks and Trojans, there was a final moment of stillness. A fleet resting beneath the open sky. A young warrior standing upon a foreign shore. And a future waiting just beyond the horizon. After years of preparation, countless miles of travel, and a journey filled with uncertainty, the Greek fleet finally reached the land they had crossed the Aegean Sea to find. The coastline of Troy stretched beneath the warm Mediterranean sun, a landscape of fertile plains, gentle rivers, and distant mountains. Behind the open fields rose the mighty city of Troy, protected by massive walls that had stood for generations. The Greeks had arrived expecting a battle. The Trojans had been waiting for them. Yet before the first clash of weapons, there was a moment of stillness. Thousands of men stepped from their ships onto foreign soil. After such a long journey, the warriors had finally reached the place that would define their lives forever. For Achilles, this was the moment when legend became reality. The young prince who had once trained among the forests of Mount Pelion now stood before the greatest challenge of his life. The peaceful lessons of Chiron had prepared him for battle, but no teacher could truly prepare a person for the uncertainty of war. The Greeks saw Troy as a prize to be conquered. The Trojans saw their home threatened by a foreign army. The city itself was worthy of such a struggle. Located near the entrance to the Dardanelles, it occupied a strategic position between Europe and Asia. Its location allowed it to benefit from trade routes that connected distant civilizations. Merchants traveled through the region carrying metals, textiles, pottery, and luxury goods from lands far beyond Greece. The wealth of Troy was reflected in its palaces, treasures, and skilled craftsmen. Its people were not simply warriors behind stone walls. They were farmers who cultivated the surrounding plains, artisans who created beautiful objects, merchants who traveled across the seas, and families who lived ordinary lives beneath the protection of their king. At the center of this city ruled Priam, the aging king of Troy. Unlike many rulers remembered only for power, Priam was often portrayed as a deeply human figure. He was a father, a husband, and a grandfather whose greatest concern was the safety of his people. He had lived through many years of prosperity and now faced the greatest threat his kingdom had ever known. Among his many children was Hector. If Achilles represented youthful brilliance and unstoppable strength, Hector represented duty and responsibility. He was the greatest warrior Troy had ever produced, but his motivations were different from those of many heroes. Hector did not fight because he wanted fame. He fought because Troy was his home. He fought for his parents, his wife Andromache, his young son Astyanax, and the countless people who depended on him. The ancient stories often place Achilles and Hector side by side because they represent two different visions of heroism. Achilles was driven by glory. Hector was driven by obligation. Both were extraordinary. Both were destined for tragedy. Within Troy's walls lived another figure whose choices had brought the armies together: Paris. The Trojan prince was known for his beauty, charm, and skill with a bow. Unlike Hector, he was not celebrated as a great warrior. His strengths were found in diplomacy, romance, and personal appeal. Yet one decision made during his encounter with the goddesses Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite would change the course of history. By choosing Aphrodite's promise of love, Paris became connected to Helen of Sparta. Their story became the spark that ignited the war. The Greek camp outside Troy slowly transformed into a permanent settlement. Tents spread across the coastline. Fires burned each evening. Soldiers repaired weapons, prepared meals, and waited for orders. The days before major battles were filled with routines familiar to every army throughout history: maintaining equipment, caring for animals, sharing stories, and trying to find moments of comfort in an uncertain environment. Among the Greek warriors, Achilles quickly gained attention. Even before he entered battle, his reputation had traveled ahead of him. The Trojans knew his name. The Greeks looked to him with admiration. His speed, skill, and confidence separated him from other warriors. But Achilles was still young. He had not yet experienced the exhaustion of a long war. He had not yet felt the frustration of leaders who disagreed. He had not yet discovered how easily honor could become a source of conflict among proud warriors. For now, he stood ready. The first battles began as the Greeks pushed inland and tested the defenses surrounding Troy. Raids were launched against nearby settlements. Armies moved across the plains. Warriors from both sides met beneath the open sky, where the outcome of individual encounters could change the reputation of an entire kingdom. The war that everyone expected to be brief had begun. But Troy was not easily taken. Its walls remained strong. Its defenders remained determined. And as the seasons changed, the Greek warriors slowly realized that they had not arrived for a short campaign. They had entered a struggle that would consume years of their lives. For Achilles, those years would bring moments of unmatched glory, unforgettable friendships, and painful choices. The world would soon learn why his name stood above all others. But first, he needed to become the warrior the songs promised he would be. The young hero from Phthia had reached Troy, and the age of Achilles had begun. The war outside Troy had begun, But the great city did not fall as quickly as the Greek kings had hoped. Days became months. Months became years. The wooden walls of Troy continued to stand firm in the distance, a constant reminder that courage alone could not easily overcome stone, strategy, and determination. For the warriors gathered outside the city, life became a mixture of battle and waiting. But for many, the person who represented the greatest hope for victory was Achilles. The young prince from Phthia had become exactly what the legends promised. Swift, fearless, unmatched. The Greeks called him the greatest warrior among them, and the Trojans knew his name with equal certainty. His reputation spread not only because of his victories, but because of the almost effortless way he moved through battle. Everything Achilles had learned on Mount Pelion now found its purpose. The lessons of Chiron were no longer practiced among peaceful forests and quiet streams. They were tested beneath the harsh sunlight of the battlefield. He was not simply strong. Many warriors possessed strength. What made Achilles different was the harmony between speed, instinct, and precision. He seemed to understand battle before it unfolded. At his side fought the Myrmidons. These warriors from Phthia were among the most respected soldiers in the Greek army. They followed Achilles with complete devotion, not only because he was their prince, but because he had earned their admiration. They trusted his judgment and believed that wherever Achilles led them, victory would follow. The bond between Achilles and his men reflected something important about ancient Greek ideas of leadership. The Myrmidons did not fight simply because they were commanded. They fought because they believed in Achilles. During the early years of the war, Achilles led numerous campaigns beyond the walls of Troy. The Greeks were unable to immediately capture the city, so they weakened Troy by attacking nearby settlements and cutting off its allies. These raids became an important part of the conflict. The warriors traveled through unfamiliar lands, crossing plains and entering coastal towns that had connections to Troy. Each victory brought supplies, wealth, and prisoners back to the Greek camp. These campaigns also increased Achilles' reputation, turning him from a talented young warrior into a figure almost larger than life. Among the places connected to his story was the city of Lyrnessus. There, Achilles captured Briseis, a woman whose name would later become tied to one of the most important moments of his life. At this point, however, she was simply one of many people whose lives were changed by the events of war. The ancient world viewed such outcomes differently than we do today. In Bronze Age warfare, captives and the distribution of prizes were often connected to honor, status, and the rewards of victory. Yet beneath those customs were real human lives, and the stories of heroes often contain reminders that war affected far more than those who carried weapons. As the years passed, Achilles continued to stand apart from the other Greek commanders. Agamemnon held authority because he was the most powerful king. Odysseus was admired for his intelligence. Ajax was respected for his immense strength. Nestor was valued for his wisdom. But Achilles possessed something different. He represented the ideal warrior. To the Greeks, he seemed almost like a figure from another age, a person who had reached the highest level of human ability. Yet even as his fame grew, the same qualities that made him extraordinary also created difficulties. Achilles was proud. He knew his worth, and he expected others to recognize it. In a world where honor was considered a vital part of identity, disrespect was not a minor insult. For a warrior like Achilles, a damaged reputation could feel like a wound deeper than any physical injury. This pride would one day bring him into conflict with the very army he fought beside. But for now, the relationship between Achilles and the Greek forces remained strong. He was their greatest weapon, their greatest hope. the warrior they believed could change the course of the war. Across the battlefield, however, another hero was earning admiration: Hector of Troy. While Achilles brought fear to his enemies through unmatched ability, Hector inspired loyalty through his sense of duty. When he walked through the gates of Troy, citizens looked upon him not only as a warrior but as a protector. He carried the weight of an entire city upon his shoulders. The two men had not yet met in their famous duel, but their paths were moving steadily toward one another. One represented the pursuit of eternal glory. The other represented devotion to home and family. Both were exceptional. Both were destined to become legends. And both were moving toward a moment when the world would remember their names forever. For Achilles, the early years at Troy were filled with triumph. Songs were already beginning to form around his victories. Soldiers whispered stories of his courage. Enemies feared the sight of his armor approaching across the battlefield. Yet beneath the praise and admiration, another truth remained. The prophecy had never changed. The same glory that lifted Achilles above all other warriors was leading him closer to the fate he could never escape. And soon, a disagreement among the Greek leaders would challenge everything he believed about honor, loyalty, and what it truly meant to be a hero. For years, the Greek ships remained beside the shores of Troy. The soldiers who had arrived with dreams of a quick victory slowly learned the reality of a long war. The excitement of the first days had faded, replaced by the steady rhythm of battle, waiting, and uncertainty. The great heroes of Greece continued to fight beneath the same banners, but the hardships of war began to reveal the differences between them. Among all the Greek warriors, Achilles remained the most remarkable. His victories became stories told around evening fires. His enemies feared his arrival on the battlefield, and his fellow soldiers looked to him as the greatest source of hope. The turning point began with a dispute involving Agamemnon. Among the many campaigns carried out during the war, the Greeks captured numerous cities and collected treasures as prizes. In the traditions of the heroic age, these rewards were not merely possessions. They represented honor, recognition, and status. A warrior's share of the spoils reflected how much others valued his contribution. To lose such a prize was not simply a financial loss. It was an insult. During one of these campaigns, the Greek army captured a woman named Chrysis, the daughter of a priest of Apollo. She was given to Agamemnon as his prize of honor. However, her father pleaded for her return, offering gifts and asking the Greeks to respect his position as a servant of the god Apollo. Agamemnon refused. The consequences were severe. Apollo, angered by the treatment of his priest, sent a plague upon the Greek camp. Soldiers became sick, and fear spread throughout the army. After many days of suffering, the Greek leaders gathered to discover the cause. The prophet Calchas revealed the truth. The plague would continue until Chrysis was returned. Eventually, Agamemnon agreed to release her. But the powerful king was unwilling to accept the loss of his own honor without compensation. If he gave up his prize, he demanded another in return. His eyes turned toward Achilles. Among Achilles' possessions was Briseis, a woman captured during the earlier campaigns. She had been awarded to Achilles as a symbol of his achievements and status. Agamemnon ordered that she be taken from him. To the king, this may have seemed like a small matter, a simple exchange of rewards between commanders. To Achilles, it was something far greater. It was humiliation. The warrior who had spent years risking his life for the Greek cause felt that his sacrifice had been ignored. He had fought the hardest battles, led the most skilled soldiers, and carried the reputation of the Greek army upon his shoulders. Yet when a dispute arose, Agamemnon chose to dishonor him. The anger that had always existed quietly within Achilles finally rose to the surface. The famous confrontation between the two men became one of the defining moments of the Trojan War. Before the gathered Greek leaders, Achilles challenged Agamemnon's decision. Their argument was not simply about Briseis. Beneath the disagreement was a deeper question. What does a hero deserve? Is honor given by kings? Or is it earned through personal sacrifice? Achilles believed his worth came from his actions. He had bled for the Greeks while Agamemnon remained a commander behind the lines. To take away his reward was to suggest that his efforts meant nothing. Agamemnon, however, saw himself as the supreme leader of the expedition. He believed authority required obedience. A king who allowed his warriors to challenge him risked losing control over the entire army. Neither man was willing to step aside. Pride stood between them. For Achilles, this wound cut deeper than any weapon. In anger, he made a decision that shocked the Greek army. He would no longer fight for them. The greatest warrior among the Greeks would withdraw from the battlefield. He called upon his mother, Thetis, and asked her to seek help from Zeus. If the Greeks did not appreciate his value, he wanted them to understand what the war looked like without him. Thetis, still carrying the sadness of her son's fate, went to Mount Olympus. There she pleaded with Zeus to allow the Trojans to gain the advantage for a time. Only then, she believed, would the Greeks realize how desperately they needed Achilles. Zeus agreed. And with that decision, the balance of the war began to shift. Achilles returned to his ships and remained apart from the fighting. The Myrmidons, once eager to follow him into battle, now waited quietly. Their weapons rested untouched. Their leader, the warrior who had seemed unstoppable, sat removed from the conflict he had once dominated. At first, some Greeks may have believed the war could continue without him. They would soon learn otherwise. Without Achilles, the Greeks lost their greatest champion. The Trojans became bolder, pushing closer toward the Greek ships and threatening to destroy the very fleet that had carried the armies across the sea. The absence of Achilles was felt everywhere. The warrior who had once brought confidence now left behind uncertainty. And while the Greek army struggled, Achilles remained beside the shore, watching the waves roll in and out, wrestling with his own emotions. He had achieved everything a warrior could desire. Yet, in a single moment, his pride had separated him from the very people who needed him most. The prophecy of Achilles had always promised glory, but glory came with a price. And now, as the war moved into a darker and more desperate stage, Achilles would discover that refusing to fight could be just as powerful and just as dangerous as entering the battlefield itself. Under the leadership of Hector, the Trojans grew increasingly confident. Hector was not a warrior who fought carelessly. He understood the responsibility he carried. Every decision he made affected not only soldiers, but the people inside Troy's walls. Yet he also understood the opportunity before him. With Achilles removed from the battlefield, the Greeks had lost the advantage that had protected them for so long. The Trojan army pushed forward. They advanced across the plains, forcing the Greeks backward toward their ships. The sounds of battle grew louder near the coastline. Fires burned. Shields collided. Warriors fought desperately to protect the vessels that had carried them across the sea. For the Greeks, the situation became increasingly dangerous. Many of their greatest fighters were wounded. Their commanders struggled to hold their forces together. Even the most courageous warriors began to understand that the absence of Achilles had created a weakness no one else could fully replace. Among those watching the struggle was Patroclus. His name would become forever connected to Achilles, not because he sought fame for himself, but because of the friendship between two men caught in the tragedy of war. Patroclus was not described as the strongest warrior among the Greeks. He did not possess Achilles' unmatched speed or legendary skill. Yet what he lacked in reputation, he carried in compassion, loyalty, and wisdom. To Achilles, he was far more than a companion. He was a trusted friend. Their bond had begun long before the shores of Troy. Ancient traditions tell different stories about how they met, but many describe Patroclus as someone who shared Achilles' youth and stood beside him through important moments of his life. Some stories place him with Achilles during his years of training under Chiron, while others describe their friendship forming later. Patroclus was one of the few people who truly understood Achilles. He knew the person beneath the legend. As the Greek ships came closer to destruction, Patroclus approached Achilles. He saw the suffering around him and could not remain silent. He asked Achilles to reconsider, but Achilles remained hurt and angry. The insult from Agamemnon still burned within him. He had not forgotten the humiliation he felt, nor had his pride allowed him to forgive easily. Yet even Achilles could not ignore the pain of seeing his fellow Greeks suffer. Eventually, Patroclus offered another solution. If Achilles would not return to battle himself, perhaps Patroclus could wear his armor and lead the Myrmidons in his place. The Trojans, seeing the famous armor approaching, might believe Achilles had returned. The sight alone could restore courage among the Greeks and create fear among their enemies. It was a desperate plan, but desperate moments often create desperate choices. Achilles agreed. However, he gave Patroclus a warning. He told him not to pursue the Trojans too far. Drive them away from the ships. Protect the Greeks. Then return. Achilles understood the danger of chasing glory. He knew how quickly victory could become destruction. Patroclus accepted the armor. For a moment, the battlefield seemed to believe that Achilles himself had returned. The legendary armor shone beneath the sun. The Myrmidons gathered behind their leader. The Greek soldiers found new courage, and the Trojans hesitated as they saw what they believed to be their greatest enemy approaching once again. The plan worked. The Greeks pushed forward. The Trojans retreated from the ships. For the first time in many days, hope returned to the Greek camp. But victory brought danger. Patroclus, inspired by the success of the moment, continued beyond the limits Achilles had set. The desire to save his companions grew stronger with every step. The warrior wearing Achilles' armor began to move deeper into the conflict, closer and closer toward the walls of Troy. And there, among the chaos of battle, fate waited. The gods themselves watched the struggle. Apollo, protector of Troy, entered the battlefield and turned against Patroclus. The protection surrounding him weakened. His confidence faded. The warrior who had seemed invincible while wearing Achilles' armor suddenly found himself vulnerable. Then came Hector. The greatest defender of Troy met Patroclus on the battlefield. In the confusion of war, Hector believed he was facing Achilles himself. The encounter between them became one of the most important moments of the entire conflict, not because it involved the greatest warrior, but because it involved the person Achilles loved most. Patroclus fell. The armor of Achilles was taken, and the news traveled quickly back to the Greek camp. When Achilles heard what had happened, the anger that had kept him away from battle transformed into something far deeper. The man who had refused to fight because his honor had been wounded now faced a pain that no insult could compare with. He had lost the person closest to him. The consequences of his choice had become impossible to ignore. Patroclus had gone in his place, and he would never return. As night settled over the Greek camp, The flames burned low and the sea moved quietly beyond the ships. Achilles stood at the edge of a new path, one that would lead him back into battle. But this time, he would not fight for honor. He would not fight for treasure. He would not fight for the approval of kings. He would fight for his friend. And that decision would bring him closer than ever before to the fate he had always known awaited him. The argument over honor, the stolen prize, and the wounded pride that had separated him from the Greek army all seemed small compared to the emptiness left behind by Patroclus' death. Grief had accomplished what pride could not. It brought Achilles back to the battlefield. Yet before he could return, he needed new armor. The armor Patroclus had worn had been taken by Hector, and Achilles could not enter battle without the protection and symbols worthy of the warrior he had become. His old armor had been lost, and so Thetis once again turned to the gods for help. She traveled to Mount Olympus and sought out Hephaestus, the divine craftsman. Among all the gods, Hephaestus was unlike any other. While many Olympians were celebrated for beauty, power, or wisdom, Hephaestus was honored for his skill. He was the master of the forge, the creator of magnificent weapons, armor, and treasures beyond the ability of mortal hands. In his workshop, flames burned endlessly. The sound of metal being shaped echoed through the halls. With divine fire and unmatched craftsmanship, Hephaestus began creating armor for Achilles. This was not ordinary equipment. It was armor meant for a warrior whose name would outlive kingdoms. The most famous piece was the shield. Ancient poets described it in extraordinary detail, especially Homer in the Iliad. Rather than showing only scenes of war, the shield contained an entire vision of the world. Upon its surface were images of the heavens, the earth, and the sea. Stars and constellations surrounded scenes of human life. There were cities celebrating festivals and cities facing conflict. There were fields being cultivated, harvests being gathered, and people dancing beneath the evening sky. The shield showed weddings, judgments, animals grazing, and rivers flowing. It was a reminder that the world was larger than any single battle. While warriors fought over honor and glory, ordinary life continued. People planted crops, raised families, created music, and celebrated moments of happiness. The shield carried the complete picture of existence, the peaceful and the violent, the joyful and the tragic. Perhaps this was the final lesson Achilles received before returning to war. A hero's life may be shaped by battle, but the world worth protecting exists beyond it. When Hephaestus completed the armor, Thetis returned it to her son. Achilles looked upon the shining bronze and prepared himself for the final stage of his journey. But before entering battle, there was one last matter to address. Agamemnon. The conflict that had divided the Greek army remained unresolved. The king who had taken Briseis from Achilles now needed the warrior more than ever. Without Achilles, the Greeks had nearly lost their ships. Without Achilles, the Trojans had gained confidence and momentum. The greatest warrior of Greece had become the one person they could not replace. Agamemnon offered reconciliation. He returned Briseis and presented gifts as compensation, attempting to restore the honor that had been damaged. The exact details of their agreement varied across traditions, but the meaning remained the same. The two most powerful figures in the Greek army had set aside their anger because something greater demanded it: the war itself. Yet Achilles was no longer returning for Agamemnon. He was not returning for treasure. He was not returning for recognition. He was returning for Patroclus. Before stepping onto the battlefield, Achilles faced a moment of painful reflection. He knew what his return meant. He understood the prophecy that had followed him since childhood. Every victory would bring him closer to the fate he could not avoid. Thetis had always known. The glory Achilles desired would come at a terrible cost. Now that cost stood before him, still he chose to fight. The return of Achilles changed the atmosphere of the entire war. The Greeks felt hope return. The Trojans felt fear. For years, they had watched the greatest warrior among the Greeks remain silent. Now his armor once again appeared beneath the sunlight. The sight alone carried the weight of legend. The Myrmidons prepared themselves. Their leader had returned. The battlefield that had once seemed uncertain now felt transformed. Soldiers on both sides understood that something important had changed. This was no longer simply another day of fighting outside Troy. Achilles had returned to the war. And when Achilles fought, the world seemed to move differently. The battles that followed were unlike those before. The anger that once consumed him had become something colder and more focused. He no longer fought to prove his worth. He no longer fought to earn praise. He fought with the grief of someone who had lost the person closest to him. Every movement carried memory. Every strike carried sorrow. The warrior who had once sought glory now moved through battle with the knowledge that nothing could bring Patroclus back. The Trojans began to retreat before him. Their confidence disappeared. Warriors who had once advanced boldly now feared facing the man whose name had haunted them for years. And among them stood Hector, the defender of Troy, the man who had taken Patroclus' life. The two greatest warriors of the war were finally moving toward their inevitable meeting. Achilles had returned. His new armor shone beneath the sky. His name echoed across the plains. And destiny, which had waited patiently since his birth, was drawing closer with every step. When Achilles returned to the battlefield, the Greeks witnessed a warrior unlike the one who had departed. Before, Achilles had fought with confidence and ambition. He wanted to prove himself, earn honor, and secure the everlasting reputation promised by prophecy. Now, something had changed. The joy of victory was gone. The desire for recognition had faded. What remained was grief. The death of Patroclus had transformed Achilles' anger into a force that seemed impossible to contain. He no longer fought because he wanted to be admired. He fought because he had lost someone who represented the last connection to the peaceful life he had known before Troy. The warrior who entered battle that day carried not only a spear and shield, but the weight of a broken heart. The Trojans quickly understood that the balance of the war had shifted again. For years, they had faced the Greek army as a united force. But even during the fiercest battles, they had never forgotten the threat of Achilles. His absence had allowed them to advance, but his return brought back the fear they had felt since the beginning of the conflict. The sight of his armor moving across the battlefield was enough to change the courage of many soldiers. Yet even as his victories grew, there was a darker side to his return. The same passion that made Achilles extraordinary also made him dangerous. Grief had hardened him. The warrior who once listened to Chiron's lessons about wisdom and balance now allowed sorrow to guide his actions. He was no longer the young man who trained among peaceful forests and learned the value of restraint. He was a hero consumed by loss. As Achilles pushed the Trojans back toward their city, many warriors fled before him. The Greek army regained the confidence it had lost during his absence. After years of struggle, they once again believed victory might be possible. But one man refused to retreat: Hector. Inside Troy, the people looked to him as their greatest protector. He knew what awaited him if he remained outside the city walls. He understood the danger of facing Achilles, perhaps better than anyone. Yet Hector was not the kind of warrior who abandoned responsibility when the moment became difficult. As Achilles drove the Trojans toward their gates, Hector prepared himself for the encounter he had known would eventually come. The two warriors represented opposite sides of the same heroic world. One fought because he had lost someone he loved. The other fought because he had everything left to protect. Before the final confrontation, the gods themselves became involved. The Olympians watched the conflict closely, supporting different sides according to their own loyalties and personal interests. Athena favored the Greeks. Apollo protected Troy. Zeus observed the unfolding events, knowing that even the gods could not completely escape the power of fate. As Achilles approached the city, Hector initially stood his ground. But when he saw the warrior coming toward him, fear overcame him. For the first time, Hector ran. The greatest defender of Troy fled before the greatest warrior of Greece. But eventually Hector stopped. Perhaps he knew that some battles could not be avoided. He turned to face Achilles. Before the fight began, Hector made one final request. He asked that whoever fell should receive proper respect after death. He understood that war was brutal, but he hoped that some measure of honor could survive even among enemies. Achilles refused. The grief within him was too powerful. He could not see Hector as simply another warrior. He saw him as the person responsible for Patroclus' death. The pain he carried left no room for forgiveness. Then the duel began. The clash between Achilles and Hector became one of the most famous moments of the Trojan War. Hector fought with courage and determination. He was not a weak opponent. He was a hero in his own right, trained for battle and respected by both allies and enemies. But Achilles was fighting with a different kind of intensity. Every movement carried the memory of Patroclus. Every strike carried years of anger, sorrow, and destiny. In the end, Achilles' skill proved greater. Hector fell. The greatest warrior of Troy was defeated. For a moment, the battlefield became silent. A city watched from behind its walls. An army stood waiting. The hero who had protected Troy for so long was gone. Achilles had achieved the victory he desired. The warrior who had taken Patroclus from him had been defeated. Yet the moment brought no peace. No victory could erase grief. No triumph could restore what had been lost. Instead of allowing Hector the dignity he had requested, Achilles allowed his anger to continue beyond the battlefield. In the ancient traditions, he dishonored Hector's body, tying it to his chariot and dragging it away from the city. The act revealed the deepest tragedy of Achilles. He had become the greatest warrior alive. But greatness had not made him whole. The same emotions that made him love deeply also allowed his grief to become destructive. That evening, as the sun disappeared beyond the plains of Troy, Achilles returned to the Greek camp carrying the victory everyone had hoped for. But there was no celebration within him. He had defeated his greatest enemy. He had avenged his closest friend. And yet he remained a man mourning the person he could never bring back. The prophecy had promised Achilles eternal glory. But as the darkness settled over the battlefield, he began to discover the painful truth hidden within that promise. A name can live forever, but a life cannot. The death of Hector changed the atmosphere of the Trojan War. For the Trojans, it was a devastating loss. Hector had been more than a warrior. He had been the shield protecting their city, the son who brought honor to King Priam, and the husband and father whose presence gave hope to those within Troy's walls. Without him, the city felt suddenly vulnerable. For the Greeks, Hector's defeat seemed like the moment they had been waiting for. Their greatest enemy had fallen. The warrior who had defended Troy for years was gone. and Achilles had once again proven that no one could stand against him. Yet victory did not bring the peace Achilles expected. The grief that had brought him back to battle remained. After the death of Patroclus, Achilles had believed that defeating Hector would somehow ease the pain inside him. He imagined that revenge would bring closure, that the anger burning within him would finally disappear. But grief does not vanish when an enemy falls. The battlefield became quiet. The celebrations of victory were distant. Achilles had achieved the revenge he sought, but he was still the same man who had lost his closest friend. The ancient stories remind us that heroes were not perfect figures untouched by emotion. They experienced love, anger, sorrow, and regret just as ordinary people did. Achilles' greatness came not from being without weakness, but from the intensity with which he experienced everything. He loved deeply. He fought fiercely. He mourned completely. While Achilles remained consumed by his own sorrow, another grieving father prepared to do something almost unimaginable. King Priam of Troy. Within the walls of Troy, Priam mourned the loss of his son. Hector's body had been taken by Achilles, and according to the customs of the ancient world, a warrior's body deserved respect after death. The proper burial of the dead was one of the most important duties a family could fulfill. Without it, the soul was believed to remain unsettled. For Priam, the thought of Hector lying dishonored was unbearable. So the elderly king made a decision that required extraordinary courage. He would go directly to Achilles. It was an act almost impossible to imagine. Priam was not a warrior arriving with an army. He was not a king demanding justice through power. He was an old father entering the camp of the man who had killed his son. Carrying gifts and guided by divine assistance, Priam crossed the dangerous space between enemies. He entered the Greek camp alone. The moment he reached Achilles became one of the most powerful scenes in ancient literature. The two men, separated by war and tragedy, suddenly found themselves connected by something deeper than their differences. Plus, Priam approached Achilles and did what no enemy expected. He knelt before him. He asked Achilles to remember his own father, Peleus, the old king of Phthia who had raised him, loved him, and watched him leave for Troy knowing he might never return. Priam reminded Achilles that somewhere across the sea was a father who also knew the pain of losing a son. In that moment, Achilles no longer saw Priam as the king of Troy. He saw a grieving father, and perhaps he saw a reflection of his own sorrow. The anger that had controlled him began to soften. For the first time since Patroclus' death, Achilles allowed himself to feel something beyond rage. Compassion. The meeting between Achilles and Priam became a reminder that even in the middle of war, humanity could still survive. Enemies could recognize each other's suffering. Two men who had every reason to hate one another could share a moment of understanding. Achilles returned Hector's body. A temporary peace was granted so the Trojans could mourn and bury their fallen hero. For a brief time, the battlefield became still. The sounds of fighting faded. The people of Troy prepared funeral ceremonies. The Greeks waited, and Achilles, perhaps for the first time in years, experienced a moment of reflection. He had spent his life chasing glory. He had been told since childhood that his name would be remembered forever. But standing before Priam, he may have understood the cost of that immortality. A hero could be celebrated by generations yet unknown, but the people who loved him would still feel his absence. Fame could preserve a name. It could not preserve a person. After Hector's funeral, the war continued. The death of Troy's greatest defender did not immediately end the conflict. The city remained strong, and the Greeks still faced the difficult task of overcoming its massive walls. New warriors entered the story. New battles unfolded. The conflict moved toward its final stages. But Achilles himself was nearing the end of his journey. The prophecy that had followed him since childhood had never disappeared. His mother Thetis had always known that glory and death were connected. The same path that would make Achilles unforgettable would also lead him toward his final moment. The Greeks believed heroes could achieve a form of immortality through memory. Achilles would certainly achieve that. His name would survive kingdoms, languages, and civilizations. But before his story could become legend, he still had one final challenge to face. The greatest warrior of Greece had defeated Hector. He had reached the height of his fame. He had experienced the deepest sorrow. And now, as the war continued beneath the walls of Troy, Achilles moved unknowingly toward the final battle of his life. A moment where even the greatest hero would discover that no amount of strength could overcome the destiny written for him. After Hector's death, the Trojan War entered its final and most uncertain stage. The city of Troy still stood. Its walls remained strong. Its people continued to resist. The Greeks had lost and gained many warriors throughout the years, but one fact remained clear. Even without Hector, Troy was not defeated. The battlefield that had once been dominated by the rivalry between Achilles and Hector now awaited a new series of struggles. New champions rose, and the gods continued to influence events according to their own purposes. For Achilles, however, the world had changed. The anger that had driven him after Patroclus' death had faded into something quieter. The encounter with Priam had reminded him that even enemies carried their own pain. He had spent years seeing the Trojans as opponents standing between him and victory, but the suffering of Priam revealed something deeper. Every side of war contained grief. Every army was made of people with families, memories, and hopes. Yet despite this realization, Achilles remained a warrior bound to the path he had chosen. He had returned to Troy knowing the prophecy that followed him. He understood that his days were limited, but he continued forward because glory and fate were intertwined. The Greeks still needed him, and the war was not over. During this period, new defenders came to aid Troy. One of the most famous was Penthesilea, the warrior queen of the Amazons. Ancient traditions describe her as a fierce and skilled fighter who arrived with a group of Amazon warriors to support the Trojans. Like many heroes of the age, she sought honor through courage and battle. Her arrival brought a new challenge for the Greeks. The Amazons had a reputation as extraordinary warriors, and Penthesilea was considered their equal. According to later stories, Achilles and Penthesilea eventually met in combat. The details differ among ancient writers, but many describe a dramatic encounter between two remarkable fighters. Achilles defeated her, but when he saw her after the battle, he felt a moment of sorrow and admiration. He recognized that he had not simply defeated an enemy, he had taken the life of another person who possessed bravery and honor. The story reflects a recurring theme in Greek mythology. The greatest heroes often discover that their enemies are not monsters. They are reflections of themselves. Warriors on opposite sides may share the same courage, the same dreams of glory, and the same fear of death. Another major defender of Troy soon appeared, Memnon, king of Ethiopia. Like Achilles, Memnon was said to be the son of a mortal parent and a divine mother. His arrival created a powerful parallel between the two warriors. Both were extraordinary. Both carried famous ancestry. Both were destined for greatness. Their confrontation became one of the final legendary battles of the Trojan War. The two heroes met on the battlefield, each representing the highest ideals of their respective armies. Their duel was not merely a contest between individuals. It was a meeting between two legends whose stories had been shaped by fate. Ultimately, Achilles emerged victorious. Achilles possessed unmatched ability, but his very greatness separated him from ordinary life. He could not simply return home and become an unknown man. Meanwhile, the Trojans continued searching for a way to defeat him. A warrior as powerful as Achilles seemed almost impossible to overcome in direct combat. The Greeks believed he was their greatest weapon, while the Trojans understood that removing him from the battlefield was essential if they hoped to survive. According to later traditions, Paris, the Trojan prince whose actions had helped begin the war, played a central role. Unlike Hector, Paris was not known as a great warrior on the battlefield. His strengths were different: his beauty, charm, and skill with a bow. Yet sometimes legends are not decided by strength alone. The stories tell that Apollo, who had long supported Troy, guided Paris' actions. The god helped direct the fatal shot toward Achilles. The arrow struck the one place where Achilles was vulnerable. In many later traditions, this was his heel, the place untouched by the magical waters of the Styx when his mother attempted to make him invulnerable as a child. However, this detail was not part of Homer's original account and appeared in later versions of the myth. The deeper meaning of the story remained the same. Even the greatest warrior possessed a weakness. No hero was completely beyond fate. Achilles, who had defeated countless warriors and seemed almost impossible to stop, was finally brought down. The battlefield that had once trembled at his approach became silent. The Greeks lost their greatest champion. The Trojans lost the fear that had surrounded them for years. Yet even in death, Achilles achieved what the prophecy had promised. Immortality, not the immortality of the gods, but the immortality of memory. His name would be carried through songs and stories for thousands of years. Generations would continue asking the same questions that surrounded him from the beginning. Was Achilles a hero because of his strength? Because of his courage? Because of his fame? Or because, despite all his power, he remained deeply human? His story endured because Achilles was never simply a warrior. He was a son who struggled with his destiny, a friend who mourned deeply, a hero who wanted to be remembered, and a mortal man searching for meaning in a world where even legends could fall. The life of Achilles had reached its end, but the story of Achilles had only begun. The death of Achilles left a silence unlike anything the Greek army had known before. For years, he had been the center of the war. The Greeks had fought knowing that their greatest champion stood among them. The Trojans had endured because they feared him, and the gods themselves had watched his actions with interest. Now, the warrior who seemed destined to shape the outcome of the conflict was gone. Yet Troy still stood. The walls that had resisted countless attacks remained unbroken. The Greeks had lost Achilles, but they had not yet achieved the victory they had traveled so far to claim. The final chapters of the Trojan War would belong not only to those who possessed the greatest strength, but to those who possessed the greatest strategy. And that was where Odysseus entered the story. Unlike Achilles, Odysseus had never been the warrior who inspired fear through physical power. His greatest weapon was his mind. The Greeks needed a new approach. They could not break through Troy's walls. They could not defeat the city through traditional warfare. So Odysseus proposed a plan unlike anything attempted before. The Trojan horse. The story of the wooden horse has become one of the most famous legends from the ancient world. According to tradition, the Greeks constructed an enormous wooden horse and hid a group of their finest warriors inside. The rest of the Greek army then sailed away from the shore, leaving the horse behind as if it were a gift. The Trojans discovered the mysterious object outside their city. After years of war, they believed the Greeks had finally surrendered. The Trojans ultimately decided to bring the horse inside their walls. They believed they had won. Instead, they had opened the gates. That night, while the city slept, the Greek warriors hidden within the horse emerged. They opened the city gates, allowing the returning Greek army to enter. After 10 long years of conflict, Troy finally fell. The city that had resisted the greatest warriors of Greece was overcome not by strength, but by deception. But victory did not bring simple happiness. The end of the war was filled with tragedy. The Greeks had achieved their goal, but the cost had been enormous. Thousands of warriors had died. The Greeks departed Troy carrying their treasures and their memories, but each hero faced a different fate. Menelaus returned to Sparta with Helen, though their reunion was not the simple happy ending that many might imagine. Agamemnon returned home only to face tragedy within his own household. Odysseus began a journey that would become one of the most famous adventures in all of literature, wandering for years before finally reaching Ithaca. And Achilles? Though he did not live to see the fall of Troy, his influence remained everywhere. His son, Neoptolemus, entered the war during its final stages and fought with the same fierce reputation associated with his father. In this way, Achilles' story continued even after his death. His bloodline carried forward. His name remained spoken. But perhaps the greatest legacy of Achilles was not his victories. It was the complexity of his character. He was not simply a warrior without flaws. He was a person caught between opposing desires. He wanted peace, yet he was drawn toward battle. He wanted a long life, yet he desired eternal fame. He loved deeply, yet his anger caused suffering. He possessed incredible strength, yet he could not overcome his own mortality. These contradictions are what made Achilles unforgettable. Many ancient heroes were remembered because they were perfect examples of courage or virtue. Achilles endured because he was something more complicated. He was extraordinary and vulnerable, almost divine, yet completely human. The story of Achilles also carried an important lesson about the nature of glory. The Greeks believed that great deeds could allow a person to live forever through memory. Achilles achieved this better than almost anyone. Thousands of years after his death, people still speak his name. But his story asks an important question. Was the glory worth the price? Achilles gained everything he was promised. He became the greatest warrior of his age. He earned a name that would survive generations. He became immortal through legend. But he lost the ordinary joys that many people spend their lives seeking. A quiet home, a peaceful future, more years with the people he loved. The tragedy of Achilles is that he achieved exactly what fate promised him, but that achievement came with everything fate had taken away. The young boy who once walked through the forests of Mount Pelion could never have known what awaited him. He could not have imagined that his name would echo across thousands of years, that poets would sing about his anger and courage, or that people would still debate his choices long after the cities of his world had disappeared. Yet perhaps that is why Achilles remains so powerful. His story is not only about war. It is about the choices that define a life. It is about the desire to be remembered. It is about the struggle between who we are and who the world expects us to become. The walls of Troy eventually crumbled. The kingdoms of the Bronze Age faded into history. The warriors who fought beneath its skies became distant memories. But Achilles remained, a hero born from myth, a warrior shaped by fate, a man who discovered that even the greatest among us cannot escape the limits of being human. And beneath the stars of every age that followed, the name Achilles continued to be whispered, not because he lived forever, but because his story never truly died. Long after the fires of Troy had faded and the heroes of the Trojan War had become figures of legend, one name continued to stand above the rest: Achilles. His story survived not because he was flawless, but because he represented the complicated nature of humanity itself. He was a warrior of unmatched ability, yet he struggled with emotions that every person understands. He was blessed with extraordinary gifts, yet he faced the same fears and uncertainties as any mortal. The power of Achilles' story lies not only in what he accomplished, but in the questions his life continues to raise. What does it mean to be a hero? Is greatness measured by victory? By reputation? By the number of years someone lives? Or by the choices they make when faced with impossible circumstances? For thousands of years, people have returned to the story of Achilles because there are no simple answers. He was both admirable and flawed. He was both inspiring and tragic. He was both larger than life and deeply human. From the beginning, Achilles was marked by a struggle between two possible futures. His mother, Thetis, knew that her son faced a choice. One path offered a long and peaceful life, but one without great fame. The other promised eternal glory, but at the cost of his own life. Achilles chose the second path. This choice reveals one of the central ideas of ancient Greek heroism, the pursuit of honor and remembrance. In the world of the ancient Greeks, death was unavoidable. Even the greatest warriors eventually disappeared. Kingdoms fell, monuments crumbled, and generations passed away. But stories could endure. A person who performed extraordinary deeds could continue to exist through memory. This was the kind of immortality Achilles sought. Not the endless existence of the gods, not freedom from suffering, but the knowledge that his name would remain after his life had ended. In this way, Achilles represented the human desire to leave something behind. People throughout history have searched for meaning beyond their own lifetime. They build, create, explore, teach, and protect because they hope their actions will matter after they are gone. Achilles pursued this idea through battle. Others pursue it through different paths. But the desire itself remains universal. However, the story of Achilles also reveals the dangers of allowing one desire to completely control a person's life. His pursuit of glory brought him incredible achievements, but it also brought isolation and pain. His anger toward Agamemnon nearly caused disaster for the Greek army. His refusal to fight led to Patroclus entering battle in his place. His grief after Patroclus' death consumed him and pushed him toward cruelty. Achilles possessed incredible power, but he struggled with controlling the emotions that came with it. This is one reason his story has remained meaningful. He was not a distant figure who always knew the correct choice. He was someone who made mistakes, someone who suffered consequences, someone who had to face the results of his own decisions. In many ways, Achilles' greatest battle was not against Hector or the armies of Troy. It was against himself. The warrior who could defeat nearly any opponent could not easily defeat his own anger. The hero who could outrun every enemy could not outrun fate. The man who wanted to become unforgettable had to learn what that would cost. His relationship with Patroclus also reveals another important part of his character. Without Patroclus, Achilles might have remained only a symbol of strength and violence. Their friendship showed the person beneath the warrior. Patroclus was the one who reminded Achilles that life was more than reputation. He represented kindness, loyalty, and compassion. When Achilles mourned him, the world saw that behind the famous armor was a person capable of deep love. The loss of Patroclus changed Achilles because it forced him to confront something he had spent much of his life avoiding. His actions affected others. Heroes were not separate from the world around them. Their choices carried consequences. This realization came fully during his meeting with Priam. Perhaps no moment in the story better demonstrates Achilles' humanity than the night when the king of Troy entered the Greek camp and asked for his son's body. For a moment, the greatest warrior of Greece and the father of his greatest enemy shared the same sorrow. They were no longer enemies. They were two people who had lost someone they loved. This scene remains powerful because it shows that compassion can exist even in the middle of conflict. It suggests that understanding another person's suffering is one of the strongest forces available to humanity. Achilles did not become a hero because he was invincible. He became a hero because he was capable of change. He experienced anger and learned compassion. He sought revenge and discovered empathy. He chased glory and eventually understood its cost. His story is one of transformation. The legacy of Achilles continued long after ancient Greece disappeared. Writers, artists, and historians returned to his story because each generation found something different within it. Some saw a symbol of courage. Some saw a warning about pride. Some saw a tragic figure caught between destiny and choice. Modern audiences still connect with Achilles because his struggles remain familiar. Many people understand the desire to be recognized. Many people struggle between personal ambition and the needs of others. Many people face choices where every option carries a cost. Achilles reminds us that greatness is not the same as perfection. A person can be extraordinary and still be vulnerable. They can achieve incredible things and still experience loss. They can be remembered forever and still wish for a different path. The ancient world looked to heroes because heroes represented the highest possibilities of human existence. But Achilles also represented the limits of humanity. No amount of strength could make him immortal. No amount of fame could protect him from grief. No victory could bring back the people he lost. And perhaps that is why his story has endured for so long. Achilles was not remembered because he escaped being human. He was remembered because, despite all his gifts, he remained human. A son, a warrior, a friend, a legend, and a reminder that every life, no matter how extraordinary, is defined not only by how long it lasts, but by the choices made along the way. The story of Achilles began thousands of years ago, but it never truly disappeared. Long after the cities of the Bronze Age had fallen, long after the warriors of Greece and Troy became figures of legend, people continued telling stories about the young hero from Phthia. His name traveled farther than any army. It crossed seas. It entered new languages. It became part of the imagination of countless generations. The reason for this endurance is simple. Achilles represents something deeply human. His story is not only about ancient battles or forgotten kingdoms. It is about ambition, friendship, anger, love, loss, and the search for meaning. Every generation has found something different within him. To ancient Greeks, Achilles represented the highest ideals of heroic excellence. He possessed incredible skill, unmatched courage, and a reputation that separated him from ordinary people. His name became connected with the concept of arete, a Greek idea representing excellence, virtue, and the pursuit of one's highest potential. A hero was not expected to be perfect. A hero was expected to strive. Achilles embodied that pursuit more completely than almost anyone in Greek mythology. From childhood, he was shaped for greatness. His divine heritage, his training under Chiron, and his natural abilities all suggested that he was meant for extraordinary things. But his story also showed the dangers of living only for greatness. The ancient Greeks understood that every gift carried a responsibility. Strength without wisdom could become destructive. Courage without compassion could become cruelty. Pride without humility could lead even the greatest person toward disaster. Achilles' life became a reminder that greatness alone was not enough. A person also needed balance. The story of Achilles became especially important through the work of Homer, whose epic poem The Iliad preserved the most famous part of the Trojan War. Rather than telling the entire war from beginning to end, the poem focuses on a specific moment, the anger of Achilles and the consequences that followed. This focus reveals something important. The heart of Achilles' story was never simply about winning battles. It was about emotion. The Iliad begins not with a celebration of victory, but with conflict. Achilles' anger toward Agamemnon creates a chain of events that affects the entire Greek army. Through this, Homer presents a powerful idea. Even the greatest individuals are shaped by their emotions and relationships. A single moment of pride can change the course of history. A single decision can affect thousands of lives. This made Achilles a character unlike many traditional heroes. He was not simply a warrior defeating enemies. He was a person struggling with himself. Over the centuries, artists returned to Achilles because his story provided endless opportunities for exploration. Ancient Greek pottery depicted scenes from his life, including his battles, his armor, and moments from the Trojan War. Sculptors and painters later imagined him as the perfect image of heroic strength. Yet artists also focused on his more vulnerable moments. The grieving friend, the morning sun, the warrior facing his own mortality. These images showed that Achilles' humanity was just as important as his power. The story of Achilles also influenced ideas about warfare and heroism. For many cultures, the warrior became a symbol of courage and skill. Military leaders and writers often looked to ancient heroes as examples of discipline, bravery, and sacrifice. But Achilles also served as a warning. The glory of battle could not erase the pain it caused. Victory could not return those who were lost. Fame could not replace a peaceful life. This complexity allowed Achilles to remain relevant in changing times. During the Renaissance, artists and writers once again turned toward the stories of ancient Greece and Rome. Achilles appeared in paintings, sculptures, and literature as a symbol of both beauty and tragedy. His image represented the idea that even the most remarkable human beings remain vulnerable. In modern times, Achilles has continued to appear in novels, films, theater, and popular culture. Writers have reimagined him in countless ways, sometimes focusing on his warrior identity and other times exploring his relationships, fears, and emotions. Each retelling adds another layer to the legend. Some portray him as a fearless champion. Others present him as a tragic figure searching for purpose. Some emphasize his anger. Others emphasize his compassion. But all versions return to the same central question. What makes someone truly heroic? Is it strength? Is it victory? Is it being remembered? Or is it the ability to remain human despite having extraordinary abilities? The story of Achilles suggests that heroism is found in the struggle between these ideas. He wanted to be remembered, but he also wanted to live. He wanted honor, but he also wanted peace. He wanted greatness, but he also wanted connection. These conflicting desires are what make him feel real, even after thousands of years. Perhaps the most lasting image of Achilles is not the warrior charging across the battlefield. It is the young man standing between two possible futures. One path offered comfort and a quiet life. The other offered glory and remembrance. He chose the harder path. He chose the path that would make him legendary. But the tragedy of Achilles is that he discovered what many people eventually learn. Achieving a dream does not always bring the happiness we imagine. Still, his story endured because he was willing to face his fate. He did not hide from the life before him. He did not abandon the identity he had chosen. He stepped onto the battlefield knowing the cost. And because of that choice, the name Achilles survived. The kingdoms of the ancient world disappeared. The languages changed. The temples and palaces became ruins. But the story remained. A young warrior with a mortal body and a legendary spirit. A hero who reached the heights of human achievement and discovered the limits of human existence. A figure who reminds every generation that the search for meaning, honor, and purpose is one of the oldest journeys of all. The story of Achilles exists in the space between history and mythology. For thousands of years, people have wondered about the world that inspired the tales of Achilles, Troy, and the great heroes of the Bronze Age. Was there a real conflict behind the legends? Did warriors like Achilles and Hector truly walk across the plains of Anatolia? Or were these stories created entirely from imagination? The answer is more complicated than either possibility. The ancient Greeks did not separate history and mythology in the same way modern people often do. Stories of heroes carried memories of distant events, cultural traditions, and ideas about what it meant to live a meaningful life. Over generations, these memories were shaped into powerful narratives filled with gods, monsters, and extraordinary individuals. Achilles may not have existed exactly as the legends describe him, but his story emerged from a real historical world. A world of powerful kingdoms. A world of bronze weapons and chariot warfare. A world where kings competed for influence and warriors sought honor through battle. The period often associated with the Trojan War was the Late Bronze Age, roughly between 1600 and 1200 BC. During this time, civilizations across the Mediterranean were connected through trade, diplomacy, and conflict. The great kingdoms of the era were not isolated. Egypt traded with distant lands. Cities in the eastern Mediterranean exchanged goods and ideas. The Mycenaean Greeks built impressive palaces and developed a powerful warrior culture. Across the Aegean Sea stood the civilization of the Hittites, one of the strongest powers of the ancient Near East. This was the world that gave rise to the legends of heroes. The Greeks who later told the stories of Achilles looked back on this earlier age as a time when extraordinary warriors and legendary kings lived. They imagined it as a golden age of heroes, a period when humans stood closer to the gods and great deeds were still possible. The city of Troy itself has fascinated historians and archaeologists for centuries. Located in modern-day Turkey, the ancient settlement known as Troy was built and rebuilt many times throughout history. Archaeologists discovered layers of different cities occupying the same location, showing that the site had been important for thousands of years. One layer, often called Troy 6 or Troy 7, has drawn particular attention because it dates to roughly the period when a conflict like the Trojan War may have occurred. The city had impressive defensive walls, evidence of wealth, and a strategic location near important trade routes. Its position near the entrance to the Dardanelles would have made it valuable to any power seeking control of movement between the Aegean and Black Seas. This does not prove every detail of the legendary war. There is no archaeological evidence confirming Achilles, Hector, or the gods who appear throughout the stories. But it does show that Troy was a real and significant place, a city worthy of inspiring legends. The warriors described in Greek mythology also reflected the realities of Bronze Age warfare. The heroes of the Iliad fought with bronze weapons, carried large shields, wore protective armor, and traveled with armies organized around powerful leaders. Chariots played an important role in warfare, serving as symbols of status and military power. The world of Achilles was not one of knights and castles. It was a world of palace kingdoms ruled by kings, where warriors gained influence through loyalty, courage, and success in battle. Honor was central to this society. A warrior's reputation could determine his place among others. Gifts, titles, and recognition were not merely rewards. They represented social importance. This helps explain why Achilles reacted so strongly when Agamemnon took Briseis from him. To modern audiences, the argument may appear to be about a possession. But to Achilles, the issue was much larger. It was about respect. It was about whether his sacrifices were recognized. It was about his identity as a warrior. The ancient world placed enormous value on reputation because there were few other ways to preserve a person's memory. Without written records, monuments, or lasting institutions, a person's name survived through stories. A hero lived on through what others remembered. This belief shaped the entire idea of Achilles. He knew his life would be short, but he believed his actions could create something that lasted forever. The historical world behind Achilles also helps explain why the gods played such an important role in the stories. The ancient Greeks viewed the world as a place where human lives were connected to larger forces. Storms, victories, disasters, and moments of extraordinary luck could all be interpreted as signs of divine influence. The gods represented the uncertainty of existence. Even the greatest warrior could not control everything. Achilles could defeat armies, but he could not escape fate. Hector could defend Troy, but he could not save his city forever. Kings could command thousands, but they could not command time itself. This idea remains one of the strongest themes in the story. Human beings can achieve incredible things, but they still exist within limits. The historical world also reveals why the Trojan War became such a powerful legend. It was not remembered simply because of one battle. It endured because it captured the struggles that define humanity. The desire for honor, the pain of loss, the conflict between ambition and responsibility, the challenge of choosing between personal happiness and lasting achievement. These themes allowed Achilles to survive beyond the Bronze Age. The people who first told his story lived in a very different world, but the emotions within the legend remained familiar. A warrior wondering what his life means. A friend mourning someone he lost. A family fearing for those who go to war. A person searching for something that will outlast them. The world of Achilles may have disappeared beneath the passage of time, but the questions at the center of his story remain. Perhaps that is why the hero of Phthia continues to stand on the edge of history and myth. He belongs to an ancient world of bronze swords and forgotten kingdoms. But he also belongs to every generation that has ever wondered what makes a life truly unforgettable. The story of Achilles began in a world of bronze weapons, ancient kingdoms, and forgotten battlefields. Yet thousands of years later, his name remains familiar. The cities that inspired his legend have changed. The kingdoms that fought beneath the walls of Troy have disappeared. The languages spoken by those first storytellers have evolved. But Achilles continues to live in the imagination of the world. This is the rare power of mythology. A myth survives not because every detail can be proven, but because it continues to express something meaningful about being human. The story of Achilles has endured because the questions within it never disappear. What makes a person great? How should someone use their talents? Is fame worth sacrificing a peaceful life? How do we respond when we experience loss? What remains of us after we are gone? These are not questions limited to ancient Greece. They belong to every generation. Achilles remains fascinating because he represents the tension between greatness and vulnerability. He was the strongest warrior of his age, yet he could not escape sorrow. He possessed abilities beyond ordinary people, yet he struggled with emotions familiar to everyone. He was powerful, but he was not invincible. He was legendary, but he was still human. One of the reasons Achilles continues to capture attention is because his greatest battles were not always fought against enemies. His most difficult struggles were internal. He battled his pride when Agamemnon dishonored him. He battled his anger when Patroclus died. He battled his desire for revenge when facing Hector. He battled his understanding of fate as he approached his own death. The physical battles made him famous, but the emotional battles made him memorable. In many ways, Achilles represents the challenge faced by anyone with extraordinary abilities. Talent alone does not determine a person's legacy. What matters is how that talent is used. Achilles could have been remembered only as a warrior who defeated countless enemies. Instead, his story became something much larger because it explored the choices behind those victories. His anger nearly destroyed his allies. His compassion toward Priam revealed his humanity. His friendship with Patroclus showed his capacity for love. His acceptance of fate demonstrated courage. The complete story of Achilles contains all of these moments. This complexity is what separates him from a simple hero. A perfect character can be admired, but an imperfect character can be understood. Achilles continues to matter because people recognize pieces of themselves within him. Everyone knows what it feels like to want recognition. Everyone knows what it means to experience loss. Everyone faces moments when pride and wisdom come into conflict. Everyone must eventually confront the limits of time. Achilles simply experienced these struggles on a legendary scale. His story also reveals the complicated relationship between achievement and happiness. From the beginning, Achilles was offered a choice. He could live a long, quiet life and be forgotten, or he could pursue greatness and become immortal through memory. He chose greatness, and he succeeded. No other warrior of Greek mythology is remembered in quite the same way. His name became a symbol of excellence. The phrase Achilles' heel entered everyday language, representing the idea that even the strongest person can have a weakness. Yet his success came with sacrifice. The story asks whether achieving greatness is worth losing the possibility of an ordinary life. There is no simple answer. Some people find meaning in comfort and connection. Others find meaning in challenge, achievement, and leaving a lasting impact. Achilles reminds us that every choice creates a different future. The path toward greatness often requires sacrifice. The path toward peace often requires letting go of recognition. Neither choice is easy. Another reason Achilles remains important is because his story challenges the way we think about heroes. Modern ideas of heroism often focus on being morally perfect. We imagine heroes as people who always make the right decision and never allow their emotions to control them. Achilles is different. He makes mistakes. He hurts others. He struggles with anger and pride. Yet he is still considered a hero. This suggests a different understanding of heroism. Perhaps heroes are not people without flaws. Perhaps heroes are people who face their flaws. Achilles became legendary not because he was untouched by human weakness, but because he confronted the consequences of being human. His story also reminds us of the importance of relationships. Without Patroclus, Achilles would have been only a warrior. Without Thetis, he would not have understood his destiny. Without Priam, he may never have rediscovered compassion. The people around Achilles shaped his journey as much as his own abilities did. Even the greatest individuals are influenced by the connections they form. No person becomes legendary alone. The legacy of Achilles has traveled through countless forms of storytelling. Ancient poets preserved his name through epic verses. Artists captured his image in sculpture and painting. Writers continued exploring his character through new interpretations. Each generation has found a different meaning. To some, he represents courage. To others, ambition. To others, the tragedy of human potential. But perhaps the most enduring lesson of Achilles is that a meaningful life is not measured only by how long someone exists. It is measured by how deeply they live. Achilles lived intensely. He loved intensely. He fought intensely. He grieved intensely. His life was short, but it left an imprint that survived thousands of years. The warrior who stood on the plains of Troy could never have known how far his name would travel. He could not have imagined people centuries later studying his choices, debating his character, and finding lessons within his story. Yet that is the strange power of legends. A person's life can end. A kingdom can disappear. A civilization can become history. But a story with meaning can continue. Achilles remains because he represents something timeless. The desire to matter, the struggle to choose wisely, the search for purpose, the hope that in some way our lives will leave something behind. And perhaps that is the greatest victory Achilles ever achieved. Not the battles he won, not the warriors he defeated, not the glory he earned. His greatest victory was becoming a story that humanity never stopped telling. The story of Achilles begins with a choice. A mother who knew her son's fate. A child destined for greatness. A warrior standing between two possible futures. One path offered peace, family, and a long life. The other offered glory, sacrifice, and a name that would never be forgotten. Achilles chose the path of legend, and thousands of years later, we are still telling his story. The world that created Achilles has long since vanished. The ships that carried Greek warriors across the Aegean are gone. The bronze weapons that once clashed beneath the walls of Troy have become artifacts of a distant age. The voices of the people who first sang these stories have disappeared into history. But Achilles remains. Not because he was the strongest warrior. Not because he won every battle. Not because he was untouched by weakness. He remains because his story reflects the struggles that define us all. The desire to be remembered. The fear of being forgotten. The pain of losing someone we love. The challenge of choosing between what we want and what we must do. Achilles was a hero, but he was never a simple one. He was brave, but he was also proud. He was compassionate, but he was also capable of cruelty. He was destined for greatness, but he was haunted by the cost of achieving it. These contradictions are what make him unforgettable. A perfect hero might inspire admiration, but a flawed hero inspires understanding. Achilles reminds us that greatness does not come from being without weakness. It comes from facing the difficult parts of ourselves and deciding what kind of person we will become. Throughout his life, Achilles searched for meaning. At first, he believed meaning could be found through victory. He believed that defeating enemies and earning honor would give his life purpose. But the events of the Trojan War taught him something deeper. The greatest moments of his life were not only found on the battlefield. They were found in friendship. They were found in love. They were found in compassion. His bond with Patroclus revealed the person behind the warrior. His encounter with Priam revealed the humanity behind the enemy. His acceptance of fate revealed the courage behind the legend. In the end, Achilles did not become immortal because he avoided death. He became immortal because he accepted that life, no matter how extraordinary, is temporary. The ancient Greeks understood something that still feels true today. A person's life is not measured only by its length. It is measured by its impact, by the people they touch, by the choices they make, by the stories they leave behind. Achilles lived a short life, but he lived one that mattered. His name traveled beyond the battlefield of Troy, beyond the collapse of ancient kingdoms, beyond the languages and civilizations that first carried his tale. The warrior who once stood beneath the walls of a city thousands of years ago still speaks to us today. His story asks us to consider our own. What will we do with the time we have? What will we value? What kind of legacy will we leave behind? Perhaps the greatest lesson of Achilles is not that we should seek glory at any cost. It is that every choice shapes the story we create. A life of comfort may be meaningful. A life of achievement may be meaningful. A life of service, love, creativity, or courage may be meaningful. There is no single path to greatness. The challenge is discovering the path that reflects who we truly are. Achilles chose the road of the warrior. It brought him fame beyond imagination, but it also brought sorrow beyond measure. His story reminds us that every dream carries a cost, and every choice carries consequences. The question is not whether we can avoid sacrifice. The question is whether what we pursue is worth the sacrifice we make. That is why Achilles has endured. He is not simply a character from an ancient poem. He is a reflection of humanity's oldest questions. He represents ambition and vulnerability, strength and weakness, triumph and tragedy, the desire to become something greater than ourselves. As the centuries continue to pass, the world will keep changing. New cities will rise. New civilizations will appear. New stories will be told. But somewhere, beneath the quiet sky, the name Achilles will continue to echo. The greatest warrior of Greece, the son of Thetis, the friend of Patroclus, the enemy of Hector, the hero of Troy, a mortal man who became a legend, and a reminder that while every life must eventually end, the stories we create can continue long after we are gone. Good night.